Games, and may the odds be ever in your favor. So today is the official release of Mockingjay Part 2, the final installment in the Hunger Games movie series, and I am super excited. In celebration of the release of this film, I decided to share my full series review of the Hunger Games trilogy. I just reread the entire series in preparation for the release of Mockingjay Part 2, so the entire series is very fresh in my mind. I first read the books back in early 2012 before the first movie came out and absolutely fell in love with the series. This was my first dystopian series. It was some of the first young adult I had read in a very long time, and it was also some of the first contemporary fiction that I had read after several years of reading pretty much nothing but classics. I read the series for the second time after the casting for Catching Fire was announced, but before the movie came out, as a refresher of all of the characters before we jumped into that section of the story. I unfortunately was not able to reread the entire series before Mockingjay Part 1 came out last year because I didn't have copies of the books in my own possession at the time. I have been so excited about the release of Mockingjay Part 2. By the time you guys have seen this, I will have already seen the movie because I am, of course, going to the midnight premiere of Mockingjay Part 2. In general, I obviously really love this series. Like I said, it's the first dystopian series that I ever read, and I love it. I love so many of the characters, Katniss and Haymitch and Prim and Peeta and Effie and Cinna, and just so many people that we meet throughout the series. I really love the arc of the story itself. I think it's incredibly well done, and I really love the overarching themes and philosophical questions and just ideas that Suzanne Collins tries to get you to think about throughout the entire series. So the first book is without a doubt my favorite of the series. This is really what caused me to fall in love with so many of the characters that we continue to get to know as the series progresses. I love Katniss in this book. I think she is an absolutely wonderful character, and despite the fact that she isn't always perceived as, you know, this warm, fuzzy, happy person, we know, because of the fact that this is written in first-person perspective, that everything she does in this book is for other people. She volunteers as a tribute for Prim because she wants to protect her sister, and when she's in the arena, the goal is not self-preservation for the sake of self-preservation. The goal is self-preservation because she wants to get back to her family, and then it's because she wants to also protect Rue, and then it's because she also wants to protect Peeta. And so from start to finish, Katniss's whole journey in the arena is about protecting the people that she loves, and I just absolutely love that about her. I think she is a fantastic narrator, a wonderful character. I love her a whole lot. I also really love Peeta. If you watched my Top 5 Wednesday video with my 5 favorite Hunger Games moments on Wednesday, then you know that I am a hardcore Team Peeta fan, and I was that way from the very beginning. And there are so many moments in this book in particular where he is just so sweet and kind, and we get to see so many wonderful interactions between him and Katniss. My absolute favorite moment from the entire series is in this book, and I love it. I love Rue, and I love Rue and Katniss's relationship, the entire arc of their alliance in the arena, and just how sweet and kind Rue is. Also, no surprise, I absolutely love Cinna. I love that he is like the voice of reason amongst the Capitol craziness, and he sort of appears as this stabilizer for Katniss because she's been thrown into this situation where everything is super different, and you know, it's all this glamorizing and all this stuff, but then there's Cinna there who she can trust and she can talk to and help make her feel like she's not going absolutely crazy. And I love Cinna, and I love his relationship with Katniss and how much he clearly cares for her and believes in her and is so proud of her. One of the things that I also really love about this book is the fact that even though we get to know a crap ton of people right at the very beginning, we get all of these other tributes and they're all thrown into the arena, Suzanne Collins does a really excellent job of letting you know early on who is going to be a big player and who you actually want to pay attention to, and she does a good job as much as possible of developing those characters and making it so that when their name pops up you don't go, wait, who? Which is really hard sometimes when you have a huge ensemble cast of characters and you meet all of them at the same time. I don't honestly know what else there is to say about this book other than I just adore it and I love it and I gave it 5 stars, and if you haven't read it, you should. So Catching Fire actually caught me by surprise. When I did my first couple of reads of this series, I enjoyed the book, but this was where the series started to go downhill for me. I didn't feel like it was as well paced as the first book was, and even though you're in the same situation where you meet a bunch of tributes all at one time, I felt like it was all very rushed and we really didn't get to know the people that were going to be important as the story progressed into the 3rd book. But upon reread, I was very pleasantly surprised, and I actually really enjoyed this book upon reread, and I no longer feel like it is awkwardly paced or like you don't get to know the characters at all. And on this particular reread, I wound up giving this book 4.75 stars. I love some of the new characters that we get to know in this book, particularly Finnick and Beatty, and even though we don't see her for very long, I do really love Wyrus and Mags. And I love that in this book, Katniss and Peeta actually start to become friends, because you see obviously at the beginning of the book that there's this tension that happened from the end of the last book where Peeta realizes that Katniss isn't really necessarily in love with him and is particularly not as in love with him as he is in love with her, and it was a lot of just acting for the camera and for the games to get them through the games safely. But there's the moment where they're on the train and she just blows up at everyone and she runs off the train and she gets super pissed when she hears someone walk in and she thinks it's Haymitch and it's actually Peeta, and he's like, you know what, we probably should, could we just be friends? And he asks her what her favorite color is and she tells him it's green, and then she asks him what his favorite color is and he says that it is orange, but not like a weird orange the color of sunset. And I love that moment. It's one of my favorite moments from the entire series, because up until this point, there's been this huge tension where they've never been totally sure how to actually feel about each other, because up until the games, Katniss and Peeta had never spoken, but Peeta has had this, love that he's been harboring for Katniss for his entire life, and that bomb gets dropped on her, and then she has to act like she's just as in love with him as he is in love with her, and they never actually get a chance to try to develop any kind of normal relationship until this moment. And yes, they're still thrust into another games and all sorts of other crazy things, but there's at least those couple of moments here, and then when they're on the roof on that last day that they just sort of get to chill before the games actually begins, where they just get to be normal, and it's just sweet and wonderful, and I love it. This is one of the few trilogies where I don't feel like the second book has the second book slump where you suffer from too much info dump, or it's just like a bridge from the introduction to the conclusion of the series. I feel like it does a really excellent job of continuing to develop that relationship with Peeta and Katniss, of continuing to develop the characters of Haymitch and Effie, and we get to meet Plutarch Heavensbee and we get to know Prim a little bit more, and I think this is a great second installment in the series, and love everything about the new characters we get to meet and how the story continues to progress, and yeah, it's just great. So Mockingjay is my least favorite of the series, but I still gave it 4.5 stars, which was a huge upgrade from the last time I read this. Prior to this reread, I remembered Mockingjay as feeling very rushed. I remembered feeling like the series just sort of, went downhill. It started great at the first book, it was kind of okay in Catching Fire, and then it just sort of went off the deep end in Mockingjay. That is not because of the actual end of the book or anything like that, but I just felt like the book as a whole was very rushed. But upon reread, I don't think that at all. I really love how we get to slow down a little bit in the first and second parts of this book. We obviously don't get to know too many new characters. We have Cressida and Castor and Pollux and a few other people, but for the most part we stuck with our main cast of characters that we started with in the first book, brought into the second book, and then have added a few others like Beatty and Joanna and Finnick from the second book. And I love how those characters, particularly Finnick and Beatty and Joanna, continue to develop in this book, even though it does slow down the pacing of the series as a whole a little bit and makes the beginning of the book drag on a little bit in certain points. I do think it's really necessary, and I think that Suzanne Collins did a really great job of slowing it down just enough but not too much, and then as we got to the end, slowly but surely ramping things up to bring about this epic and fantastic conclusion of a really great and wonderful series. So there you have it, friends. That is my series review of The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I would love to hear what you thought of the books. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you think the series is really strong from start to finish? Do you you feel like I used to, that it starts off strong and it sort of peters out? Who are your favorite characters? What are some of your favorite moments? Let us gush about Hunger Games in celebration of the movie release and just talk about all the things that we love about it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Happy Hunger Games, and may the odds be ever in your favor. It makes my heart melt. It makes my heart melt every time. I don't think, I actually, words are hard. Why is it so hard to talk about this book, this series?